Some people move through relationships with a level of emotional detachment that feels almost unreal. They don't build connections, they don't create stability, and they don't invest in anything that requires depth. Instead, they jump from one person to the next as if relationships are nothing more than temporary accessories. And when you look closely at their behavior, you start to realize that this pattern isn't about freedom or confidence. It's about avoidance. It's about emptiness. It's about a deep discomfort with anything that requires emotional presence. These individuals treat relationships like distractions because they are not seeking intimacy. They are seeking escape. They use people as a way to fill the silence in their own minds, to avoid confronting their own unresolved issues, and to temporarily soothe the discomfort they feel when they are alone. They don't want to sit with themselves because sitting with themselves forces them to face the truth. They don't know who they are without external stimulation. So they keep moving, they keep rotating partners, they keep chasing the next emotional high, hoping it will drown out the emptiness they carry inside. When someone jumps from relationship to relationship with no pause, no reflection, and no emotional processing, it's not a sign of strength, it's a sign of emotional instability. They rely on novelty to feel alive. New attention, new affection, new excitement. It gives them a temporary sense of identity. But the moment the novelty fades, they detach, they lose interest, they move on because we're never connected to the person in the first place. They were connected to the feeling, and feelings fade quickly when they are not rooted in anything real. People like this often confuse desire with depth. They think wanting someone physically is the same as caring for them emotionally. They think attention is the same as affection. They think intensity is the same as intimacy. But none of these things are true. Desire is not depth, attention is not affection, intensity is not intimacy. These individuals operate on the surface level of relationships because the surface is safe. The surface doesn't require vulnerability. The surface doesn't require accountability. The surface doesn't require them to confront their own emotional limitations. One of the core psychological patterns behind this behavior is emotional avoidance. These individuals are uncomfortable with vulnerability. They fear being seen, not because they don't want connection, but because connection exposes their flaws, their insecurities, and their emotional wounds. So they keep everything shallow, they keep everything temporary, they keep everything replaceable. If nothing lasts, nothing can hurt them. If no one gets close, no one can leave them. If they never invest, they never lose anything. Another pattern is the constant need for validation. People who jump from relationship to relationship often rely on external attention to feel worthy. They need to be desired to feel valuable. They need to be wanted to feel significant. But because this validation is external, it never lasts. It fades quickly. And when it fades they panic. They feel empty again. So they look for the next person who can give them that temporary sense of importance. It becomes a cycle of seeking, consuming, detaching, and repeating. And the cycle continues because they never address the root issue, the lack of internal stability. These individuals also struggle with commitment, not because they don't want companionship, but because commitment requires consistency. It requires emotional presence. It requires effort, and effort exposes their limitations. They want the benefits of closeness without the responsibilities that come with it. They want intimacy without accountability. They want connection without vulnerability. So they stay in a state of stable ambiguity, close enough to enjoy the comfort of another person, but distant enough to avoid any real emotional investment. When you observe their behavior, you notice that they don't actually build relationships. They rotate them. They don't bond. They replace. They don't grow with someone. They start over with someone new. And starting over becomes easier than staying because staying requires emotional work. Staying requires facing conflict. Staying requires honesty, and honesty forces them to confront the parts of themselves they've been avoiding for years. Their relational capacity is low. They simply do not have the emotional maturity to sustain a meaningful connection. They may appear confident, independent, or carefree, but beneath that surface is a person who is deeply uncomfortable with emotional closeness. They fear being known. They fear being understood. They fear being vulnerable, so they create a lifestyle that allows them to avoid all of these things. They keep everything temporary because temporary feels safe, and the reason they feel so and the reason th- and the reason they feel no consequences is simple. They never invest enough to lose anything. You cannot lose what you never valued. You cannot grieve when you never cared about what you never cared about. They move on quickly because there is nothing to process. There is nothing to heal from. There is nothing to reflect on. Their emotional involvement was minimal from the beginning. They were present physically but absent emotionally. And the core of this behavior is a deep fear of self confrontation. These individuals are not running toward new relationships, they are running away from themselves. They use people as emotional placeholders, temporary solutions to long term internal problems. They avoid solitude because solitude forces them to face their own emptiness. They avoid death because death requires them to acknowledge their own wounds. They avoid stability because stability demands emotional responsibility. When you understand this psychology, you realize that these individuals are not liberated. They are lost, they are not free, they are disconnected, they are not strong, they are emotionally underdeveloped. They are emotionally underdeveloped. Their behavior is not a sign of abundance, it's a sign of avoidance. They are not choosing many partners because they have many options. They are choosing many partners because they cannot handle one real connection. And the tragedy is that they often don't realize the damage they cause, not because they are cruel, but because they are disconnected from their own emotional impact. They don't understand the weight of their actions because they don't feel the weight of their own attachments. They move through people without understanding that people are not objects, people are not distractions, people are not emotional bandages. But when someone is emotionally numb, they treat others as tools rather than partners. This is the psychology of people who jump from relationship to relationship with no emotional depth. Avoidance disguised as independence, emptiness disguised as freedom, and fear disguised as detachment. They are not searching for love, they are running from themselves. And until they confront the emptiness they carry, they will continue to repeat the same cycle, consuming people instead of connecting with them, escaping themselves instead of understanding themselves, and making movement for growth. This is the end of the video, and thank you all for watching.